Welcome, everybody, to SATs 2024, The Benchmarks. Where are our Year 6 children right now? Well, thanks for joining us. Don't worry, this is not a search party. We obviously know where our Year 6 children are physically. This is about looking about where they are academically, and particularly through the lens of SATs preparation. So today, we're going to be looking at the top 5 strengths in maths and in GPS. We're going to do an up close and personal with the most challenging content domains, looking at the misconceptions behind the most incorrect answers that we've seen so far. And we'll be comparing Year 6's current performance with past paper expectations. Are we where we need to be for the SATs, or going in the right direction at least for the SATs papers in May? So, current performance, I hear you ask. How on earth do Heather and the team at Learning by Questions know the current performance of Year 6s? Well, if you were with us in November for our webinar, and don't worry if you weren't, I won't hold it against you, you'll be aware that this last year we have launched the SATs Springboard diagnostics. Now, I won't rattle on about them because this is an insights webinar. It's not a product webinar, but I will tell you 4 things about them just really, really quickly so you get a sense of context and how we've come up with this data. So the first thing to know is that these are online diagnostics, and there are 12 in maths and there are 12 in GPS. And everybody loves them. Of course, I'm going to say that you can try them out for yourself. They are online, so they are automatically marked. They automatically do analysis for your question level analysis, and they automatically give you suggested resources of where you might go next. The children don't even feel like they're doing any preparation. They're just enjoying answering the questions. So big win. Number 2, the diagnostics start off by checking that foundational learning. So we zoom back in time and we check that those early year content domains are really tight, because if you don't have those, you've not got anything to build on. The third thing is that we don't start with Year 6 content straight away. This is not like using photocopied SATs papers, and I know a lot of people have got to do this. But we know that in the SATs papers, there's some Year 6 content that you maybe haven't taught yet, and that's going to knock their confidence. So the LBQ diagnostics, they weave the Year 6 content in as they go through. And finally, as we move towards the big day itself, the diagnostics, they start to reweight themselves in the same way that the SATs exams are. So in terms of content domains, you know that your children are learning the right things in the right kind of ratios. Okay, so that's enough about the SATs diagnostics. If you do want to know more about them, stay on about 30 minutes or so, because we'll do a demo at the very end for people who do want to see it. And it is free for you to use these diagnostics till the end of February. So you must book a slot with us, and I mean literally in the next couple of days, because we're closing the gates on the free trials because we've had that many schools come to us. So if you get a trial in the next couple of days, get a meeting in the next couple of days booked for some time soon, and we can get you on a trial ASAP, and you can use it for free in the first 3 diagnostics in maths and the first 3 diagnostics in GPS, all the way to the end of February, which will be really, really helpful. So thousands of children all over the country have already done these diagnostics, especially the first few diagnostics in autumn term. And so that is the data that we're going to be talking about today. How is this going to be useful for you guys? Well, the first thing is kind of what I said at the beginning, really. Hopefully, it's really reassuring, because I imagine out there where you are in the world, in Hull and Solihull, you're on your own in the classroom. It kind of feels like you're a solo hill climber with this massive backpack of pressure on you. And what's really lovely about these webinars, what's happened this last couple of years, is that this is an opportunity for Year 6 teachers to get together and to be sharing tips and ideas and asking questions and so on. So please do use the chat, like I said before. And when I talk about amazing Year 6 teachers sharing really brilliant ideas, let me introduce to who is going to be co-hosting this webinar with me today. So first of all, I have the wonderful, really insightful, sharp as anything, Sophie Bartlett, who you may know from all things social media. She's a Year 5 and 6 teacher and our SATs past paper guru. Sophie, how are you doing today?
not quite sharp as anything since having a baby. I'd get rid of that adjective, but yeah, no, I'm very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Like a razor, everybody. I also would like to introduce you to Andy Doan. If you haven't met Andy through something else we've done at LBQ, then I'm really pleased you're going to meet him tonight. I actually consider him more part of our family than anything else. He was the year six teacher at Masefield Primary School. He's now the head teacher, and Masefield are in the top 2% of progress in the country. Have I got that right, Andy? I've not done you out of
Yes,
1% there,
yeah,
have I?
yes. This year we were well above average for reading, writing, and maths, and yes, top 2% progress for reading. But yes, thank you for having me on. Hello, everyone.
Okay,
Look
everyone will
forward
be
to
waiting
speaking.
to get those top tips from you then, Andy. Okay, then we have Daryl, who's on my team at LBQ. Daryl used to mark SATs papers. He's a year six teacher extraordinaire many years, and he's the head of our primary maths division at LBQ. And Kate Brindle, who I absolutely adore, totally lovely, English lead here at LBQ and author, and has 20 plus years working in both key stage one and key stage two. So there's very little Kate hasn't experienced. So we've got the 18 with us who have been where you are now or are still where you are now. Sophie, you're looking at SATs down the barrel, aren't you?
Right.
So we're not just going to point out either where children are going wrong. Like I said, we're going to explore why they're getting things wrong. And this team, and hopefully you guys can share some of the best ideas so you can take those back to the classroom with you tomorrow. So this data is a summary of autumn term. As I said, we might do this again when we get towards February half term, just to see how the kids have been getting on in spring. But let's get into it now. So, Kate, let's start with GPS. Can we see an overview of how we're getting on in the content domains, please?
Yeah, we can. Here it is. We've got an encouraging start here from across the first 3 GPS diagnostics that pupils have been doing. And it does show that the G1 content domain here, grammatical terms or word classes, is proving the trickiest. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by that at all. However, it is a huge content domain with a far greater spread of objectives right across the year groups than the functions of sentences content domain. So the comparison between those first 2 bars is a little bit mean, really. The G3, combining words, phrases and clauses, is the second trickiest content domain overall. Questions from these in the first 3 diagnostics are all based around subordinate clauses or identifying noun phrases. So it's content from years 2 and 3, which may not have been taught or revised recently.
Right. Okay, that's a good overview. That's really kind of zoomed out bird's eye view. Sophie, you were leaning in, checking that out. How's this looking from the perspective of SATs and what's likely to come up in exams? Do we have all the right strengths in all the right places yet?
So the 2 weightiest content domains are G1 and G5, so the word classes and punctuation. And I've said before, but between both of them, you could theoretically pass the grammar paper on that, because I think they make up just over half of the grammar paper. And like Kate said, I'm not surprised that word classes is one of the weakest, because there's so much to cover in it. And a lot of the word classes are introduced in lower year groups and then maybe not covered again, because there's so much to fit in as you go up to school. But they're often the questions towards the end of the paper or littered throughout where the cognitive demand is quite high for the question, but just because it's a noun and that's taught in year 2 or year 3 doesn't mean that a year 2 might be able to answer it. We've still got to be teaching the trickier levels of those questions as we go up to school. So it's looking good for punctuation, but I would say, yeah, the word classes, we definitely need more revision on all of that. I know all of us do.
Okay, word classes, everybody. If that's ringing true, if you know that you need some help in that direction. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit, Kate. Can you show us the best performing content domains? Let's lower ourselves into this nice and gentle. Let's see where we're winning.
Yeah, we've got some strengths here from autumn term. 4 of these objectives here from years 2 and 3 of the curriculum. So really good to see some foundational knowledge is solid there. There's some evidence from here that good knowledge of verb agreement for the standard English questions that have come up in all 3 of those diagnostics. That's a year 4 objective, and that will stand them in good stead for when those standard English questions come in for a year 6 level.
Brilliant, brilliant. So is it, thanks, Ayla, for just texting there. G1 is our weakest areas, ours are good with punctuation generally. Are we seeing that in the results there? Andy, would you say that these good results are reflected in your classroom? Is this what you're seeing in Macefield?
Yeah, most certainly. I think we're finding because this class potentially at COVID didn't get taught for year 2 and 3 in school. There's some of that foundational grammatical knowledge that is missing. So something we do straight after lunch every single day. We do LBQ grammar. We always, teach a new concept, explicitly teaching it, and then the second question set we revise the previous day. So it's always a stepped approach. We have a little saying at Macefield: practice makes permanent. We can't just do it, in year 2 and 3 and forget about it. We need to keep going back to it and over it. And, explicit teaching is such an important part of that, using something like I do, we do, you do, and then feeding it into the writing as well. So they're actually applying it as well. Really confident. But yeah, very similar to what we're finding, over at Macefield.
Brilliant. Well, that was the good news, wasn't it, Kate? So let's hold on to our hats and let's see where the greatest challenges are. Ayla's got G1 there. I'm thinking, Sophie, you were looking for some G1s and G5s. So let's see, Kate, where are our weakest areas GPS wise?
Yeah, I think unsurprising.
No surprises
unsurprisingly.
there. Ayla, I think you should be looking, kind of going, yes, I thought so.
Yeah, very tricksy apostrophes for plural possession that we'll dig in a little deeper within a moment. And the G1 word classes here have proved a big challenge for many of our pupils. These 3 word class objectives here, pronouns and determiners from year 4 and prepositions from year 3, might not have been taught for a few years and not necessarily reinforced regularly. So knowledge of these terms is evidently not secure for around half our year 6s at the moment. I'll talk more about this tricky prefix question.
Sorry, Kate. Sophie, you were not surprised by that at all, are you?
No, it's always those identifying word class things because they always put a tricky one in there. Like I think Kate said before, adverbs was quite up on the list as well, wasn't it, Kate?
It was, yeah. That was 6.
Yeah, adverb is the classic one of, it's taught lower down the school and lots of adverbs end in ly, but I can't remember which paper was a recent one. There was an adverb that didn't end in ly, maybe soon or often, and those ones catch out the children. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all. It's always those identify the relative pronouns as well. I find are always really tricky. Every class I've taught really struggled with relative pronouns, so that one doesn't shock me.
Yeah, Francesca's just put in the chat that it's interesting that full stops is the lowest since it's the one that's taught all the way up from early years there as well. Does that ring true?
I think we did okay on full stops. We got 87% of pupils answering that one correctly first time. So I think we've got some solid knowledge there, I hope.
Right, Francesca, that's interesting. I don't know how that's comparing in your class then, whether you guys are struggling with full stops. But things are looking good with the full stops elsewhere. All right. Well, let's see if we can zoom in a little bit more, Kate, because obviously, like I said before, not only do we kind of know these content domains that children are struggling with, but we can zoom into the individual answers and see where those misconceptions are. What are the misconceptions that year 6s are laboring under to the questions that children found the hardest?
Yeah, if we have a look at the next slide, please, Daryl, thank you. These are the 2 plural apostrophes questions that have been on GPS 2 and 3. So plural apostrophes is a year 4 objective, and it's been tricky for a lot of our pupils. And it would be for many adults if we're fair. Only 25% of our pupils could answer these questions correctly the first time. The main misconception being for the first one was just to omit the apostrophe entirely and just put the plural in. So girls with no apostrophe, they just weren't sure enough maybe of where to put it. And it was closely followed by the error of using a singular apostrophe, so the changing room belonging to only one girl. Then in the second example, another 25% of pupils, nope, I'm not going to use an apostrophe, I'm scared of that, even with this plural noun that doesn't end in S. But then maybe over application of learning the rule for possessive apostrophes for words ending in S has led to one of these errors, entering men's with S and apostrophe for plural possession when it doesn't end in S. So it should be apostrophe S in this case.
I'd have done that. That's what
It's
I would have
me.
put.
It
I think
is.
this is really, really hard, and I definitely would have got this wrong. Francesca, I'm sorry, you guys are absolutely killing it with the full stops. How are you getting on with plural possessive apostrophes? That's what I want to know. Pop it in the chat. Andy, what tips would you have for teaching plural or reteaching plural possessions?
Yeah, I think we've got to go back to giving children more practice. I think examples and non-examples as well to help them, kind of pattern seek and see with the visuals like we can on LBQ here. And what I really like about this question is it tests the accuracy as well of the pupils. They have to put the apostrophe in exactly the right place, and if they don't, it's going to, mark it incorrect. They'll get a little red dot on the dashboard, and at that point, they'll read the feedback. If the feedback doesn't help, we have a little motto. They've got to go to the buddy first. If not, it's to the boss. But 3 wrong answers.
I love that.
So we can make sure we're addressing that misconception straight away. Because as you said, it's quite a tricky concept for adults, not just 10 and 11-year-olds. But yeah, lots of examples and non-examples would be the takeaway there.
Heather, can I add something to Andy's?
Sorry, go on, Sophie.
Just want to add something to Andy's points. It reminded me the non-examples thing. I had a grammar board at once where whenever I was out and about, because there's always grammar mistakes in public on signs and my school email, and then we'd use them in lessons. Just this is what I saw on this shop, or this is what I saw in this restaurant, and they didn't get them to point them out. So because we know that adults quite often get these things wrong because they are quite tricky. So that's quite
I love them like on the back of a van or on a billboard or the greengrocers labels, and even in a supermarket or something, you can spot some of those, can't you?
Yeah.
I absolutely love some of the things that are coming through in the comments here. The use of apostrophes at my end is frankly hilarious, which is brilliant. I'm sure you teachers sometimes get a good laugh out of some of these. Kate, you've been teaching these, plural apostrophes for a very, very long time, and not everybody has something kind of flashy, doodah like LBQ. So what can people do? What would you have done if you were teaching or reteaching this?
I'm really enjoying the chat. Someone's just put mine like to just throw them in wherever they like. I mean, the children literally
That's
just
my
want to
approach. Scatter them.
Handfuls and just chuck them at their writing. They're just apostrophe happy sometimes. We used to do something I used to call human sentences. So my pupils would hold up word cards to make a sentence, and then somebody would be sent along the sentence with a sticky note with an apostrophe on it, and they'd move up and down the human sentence until everybody shouted, "Stop, it goes there." And it was a bit sort of pantomime-esque. But then making sure that the children could explain why the apostrophe goes in that particular place was also really, really important.
Oh, I just absolutely love that. And I don't know if people have kind of picked up on this vibe, but as being a kid of kind of drama classes, I love the idea of getting up and to the left, to the right, everybody with it. I absolutely love that idea. I can see a lot on chat. This is, obviously people are feeling that their kids are struggling with plural possession apostrophes. If you've got great ideas for that, please do put it on the chat as we move forward. We'll kind of summarize them in the end. But yeah, you are not alone. This is happening. We're seeing this on the data across everywhere in the country, across thousands and thousands of children. So please don't worry if this is something that you're challenged with in your classes. Don't worry, Emma. Take it easy. We'll send you the recording. All right, let's dive into question 2. What was the second trickiest question that we had on GPS then, Kate?
So this is a prefix question that was on one of our diagnostics. It covers a year 3-4 spelling objective, and it is a tough one because there aren't any options given in terms of which prefix should be used for biography. However, it is modelled on question 43 of the 2022 SATs paper, so it is an equal difficulty as that one. And in fact, all of our diagnostic question sets are modelled on questions from the past SATs papers. So as well as exposing gaps in their knowledge, they give pupils really valuable experience of answering the types of questions they're going to find on the papers. And this prefix really did prove tricky for many pupils. There was a very wide variety of incorrect answers. I mean, pupils might not have come across the term autobiography yet in their reading.
Yeah.
Some pupils, and this would be a really useful teaching point, gave the answer book. So they've made sense of the context, but they haven't read the question carefully. So yeah, really useful teaching point there, I think.
I think that children should be given points for initiative. I think if they've used their initiative, like Sophie's like, oh, I don't think so. But I think I was just going to say, goodness gracious, they've really tried there. It is no shock, is it, that this is modelled on question 43 on the SATs paper, Sophie, because once we get past that point, they are very tricksy, aren't they? They're
Yeah,
like kind of designed to tip you up a little
catch
bit.
them out. Yeah, it's always those kind of last 10 that my more able children are tripped up on, and then you give them back their paper or the answers, and they're doing that. Oh no, I did know that, and oh, I'm so silly for not. So yeah, those last 10 always trying to catch you out. Questions like this.
Yeah, I think it's mean of them, but there you go. So the key takeaway you were saying, Kate, was read the question carefully. That's the key thing that we want to take away. And that's really obvious to a lot of people, but how do we get them to practice that as a skill? Andy, you were alluding earlier to kind of practice, and I guess LBQ would help with it in terms of there's a little red dot or a little amber dot to go, oh, hold on, you need to go back and look at this question again, read it more carefully. Sophie, have you got any other ideas about what we can do about this? Guys in the chat, if you've got ideas about how are you helping your children to read questions carefully, because it's heartbreaking when they lose points just because they've just kind of accidentally read it wrong.
So we do this with LBQ, but you can do it with whatever kind of format you're using. I mean, what's good about LBQ is you get the instant feedback. So when the children see whether they've got the question right or wrong, if they've got it wrong, but they then realize they've got it wrong because they read it wrong. They didn't misunderstand the question. They just didn't read it properly. I asked them to just make a little tally and say, for the amount of questions you get wrong, but just because you didn't read it properly, make a tally. Just, keep it to yourself, but then see next time we do another question set, see if you can reduce that number of questions. So you're just left with the questions that you got wrong because you actually don't know the answer, rather than I just couldn't be able to read it properly, or I rushed through it, or just looked at the picture and guessed what it might be, something like that.
Yeah, just think how much you could do that on paper, couldn't you? You could do that if you photocopied SATs papers. It would just take you quite a bit longer to do it, wouldn't it? But that's the same thing. So prefixes out there, is anybody else kind of really struggling with those? So yeah, lots of people talking about those in the chat. Sophie, have you got any idea for prefixes themselves?
We've done kind of quite a nice activity before that I read in a book about looking at Greek and Latin root words, and it's really useful for vocabulary and spelling and all sorts. So we'd have a different little word every day and put them on a display. So in this case, we'd have auto, we'd look at autograph, autobiography, automatic, and what auto means and how it affects the meaning of the word, and then put them up on the display. So anytime the children came across words with a root word in that they've learned, they sort of would always go, oh, that must mean this because of that, and point towards it. So that was just quite a nice little activity that helps with something like prefixes.
I love that idea. Do you seem very like, ooh la la, to be learning some Latin and Greek? Andy, what did you think about that? How's that going to go down in Bolton with our year sixes?
I think it's something we'll definitely be looking at, teaching Latin to our Boltonians. I'm sure will go down a treat. But also, looking at the root words and the etymology of where they come from, as Sophie alluded to, is going to help their understanding of it as well, and not just the rule-based. But looking back, at the year 3-4 rules is really important at this stage. And also, some of the techniques we're using in year 6, ensuring that 3, 4, and 5 are doing them as well. We do morning maths with LBQ, first 10-15 minutes of the day. After lunch, we do exactly the same with grammar, but that's across the whole key stage too. It's not just save it till year 6. It's all your job. This is a team effort for Key Stage 2.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of year 6 teachers out there watching tonight kind of going, no, it shouldn't. It's not all on me. This has been all the way since year 3 there. Okay, thank you so much for giving us that roundup, Kate, then of autumn and with regards to GPS. Like I said, we'll keep our eyes on how the kids are getting on through spring. Now we're kind of fully into it. Watch out for our belongs as well. We do summarize them on our LBQ hub, all these results. Sophie gets in there, Kate and Daryl get in there summing things up. Let's move on to maths now. Okay, Daryl, let's go back up to that bird's eye view on maths. How are our year 6s getting on with you guys?
Up to this. So we'll start off by, obviously it's maths. We've got to have a look at some of the averages of how many questions pupils are getting right in each of the first 3. So as you can see there, the mean and median scores, you can assume that a typical year 6 pupil's got somewhere between 7 and 9 gaps in each diagnostic out of the 20 tested questions. However, you might notice the mode score is actually quite high. So that means that there's actually a large number of pupils that are scoring below the average as well. So they've got even more gaps. And it's that's pulling it down. So these we'll mention as well the first, I think Heather touched on it before, the earlier diagnostics mainly contain content from years 3 to 5. So that indicates that learning from early in the maths curriculum hasn't been fully secure and there's quite a lot to do. Comparing the first diagnostic with the third one, though, overall you can see that there is a good improvement there. Topics are being revisited in class, pupils becoming more proficient. So that's really good. And I was really pleased with the mode score being so high as it is as well. So that's the good news.
Brilliant. So, Sophie, you know what I'm going to say from a past paper perspective, how are we looking now? I mean, Daryl's just going to introduce. Sorry, Daryl, do you want to just talk us through some of these bits?
Yeah, sorry, it took a minute
Not
to
enough
change
bar
it.
charts. Not enough bar charts in maths. That's what I think. Is more
We
bar
need
charts
more.
required.
So yeah, I've got a topic breakdown here. As you can see, pupils are doing quite well in some of those most important topics like calculations, number place value, which is good. All that work on calculations that's been done over the past few years, it's generally strong. They've remembered it. And as we'll see in a couple of minutes, there aren't any place value or calculations objectives that have made it into our list of the top 5 most problematic questions. The weaknesses do tend to be in the domains that are less likely to come up in the SATs, and they make up a smaller part of the curriculum as well. So that's another bit of good news. Measurement, geometry, statistics, that you're often going to revisit those after Christmas in greater detail anyway. So there's the potential for quite a big improvement there. There is one topic standing out a little bit though, and that's fractions. Probably you've already covered it this term. Yeah. Probably already covered it this term, but we're still seeing quite a lot of gaps, and especially from early in the curriculum coming to light as well, which we'll get into in a minute.
Right. Yeah, I think so. There do seems like some areas that we might be able to tick the boxes and move on there, Daryl, a little bit, and some areas that shock horror, especially fractions, that we might need to concentrate on a bit more. Sophie, what does this look like from a SATs paper? I think I know what you're going to say, but let's just break it down a little bit.
Yeah, fractions being very important. Similar to the grammar, there are 2 main content domains here that take up bulk of the paper, and that is calculation, so full operations, and FDP. Again, between the two, it is possible to pass the whole maths paper because there's so much content between them. So calculations is looking positive, but fractions, yeah, there's just so much content to cover in it, which is why it's so tricky. But that's definitely one that I would prioritize revision for against the others.
Yeah. So I'm sure if you're in the chat and you're chatting with us in the chat, fractions, it's on your mind. If you're struggling with fractions with your year 6 class, this is what we're seeing everywhere. So don't worry about it. Let us know your stories though. Let's hear how it's going for you. Daryl, let's concentrate on the good news. Zoom us a little bit into the content domains where we're winning.
So here we go. The top 5 questions that have been most successful for year 6 pupils so far in autumn term. Nice mixture of domains, really. And pleasingly, there are some fractions ones in there as well, which we've just talked about, has definitely caused quite a lot of problems in other areas. Interesting to note that the top 2 strengths are both fractions objectives from year 3. It's quite possible. I was having a little think about this. Possibly, the subtracting fractions could be just that they've learned processes rather than having a really secure understanding of what a fraction is. As you'll see in a moment, there's some quite simple questions which have proved very problematic. Personally, I was also glad to see a question involving scaling number facts by 100 made the top 5. That scale often catches pupils out, especially if they try and calculate it using written methods rather than just simply by using place value.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Daryl. If anyone's finding anything surprising here in the strengths, then let us know. Or if these strengths, you're finding these echoed in your classroom, then do let us know in the chat there. All right, now we'll be brave and we'll hold on to our hats and we'll check out the specific weaknesses that we're seeing, Daryl, in maths.
Okay, so there were a few surprises in here. Definitely a few that caught me out. Personally, I was expecting to see some classics in there, like multiplying, dividing by 10, 100, and 1,000, maybe long multiplication in there, something like that. The fact that two of those domains are from the less significant topics is quite encouraging. But by the same token, the fact that we've got three fractions objectives and it's one of the biggest topics does indicate that you might perhaps need to revisit them for a little bit longer and a little bit more often than you might have planned. We'll take a look at the misconceptions for a couple of these in a moment. But in case you weren't at the last webinar, one particular skill to keep an eye on is that second one down there, using unit and non-unit fractions on a number line. When it's presented in that context, that's consistently caused a lot of problems for year six pupils. Hopefully, a lot of these may only require just a short review and then a bit of retrieval practice to keep it sharp.
Oh, that's good news then. Andy, you're leaning in, having a look there. Any surprises here for you?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that three of these are from the year three content. Again, this class, it may have been COVID at the time, and
Yeah.
classes following COVID went through a catch-up curriculum where they looked back at the previous year's learning, potentially year two at this point. And then when some classes got into year four, it was straight into the year four curriculum. And this is where the gaps may have occurred. So it would be very useful to look at that year three content. But I think there's definitely some quick wins, 3D shapes, get them out, have a look at them. And number lines, just because they're in year six, does not mean that they can't use number lines anymore. They're so important, and they really help children, understand the maths and visualize it as well. It's confident from the previous slide, though, that Darryl was saying that maybe some of the multiplication check in year four has supported this class with some of their calculation, multiplying by 10 and 100 and finding those links before.
So we're definitely seeing the effects of COVID here, Andy. This is not something that people should be feeling particularly guilty about. We're seeing a story happening here.
Yeah, potentially it's looking like that, from this data. And I think because of that, those catch-up curriculums, time was of the essence, and we had to focus on some of the key parts, as Sophie alluded to. Calculation and fractions are the biggest areas. So that's where a lot of the focus went on some of these smaller areas. Now, for us year six teachers, need revisiting and some retrieval practice again.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, good pointers there. All right, well, let's zoom in a little bit more, Darryl. Maybe we could have a look at the two questions maybe that children got wrong the most.
So I picked out a couple of them as well. The top one on the list there, I was a little bit surprised by just how few year six pupils got this correct the first time. So just asking for the number of edges on a cube. It may not have been taught in depth during year three. When looking at that terminology of 3D shapes, it would have been virtually impossible. I think it just about times out that they would have been during lockdown periods. Trying to teach that remotely would have been virtually impossible. 8 was the top wrong answer, showing that the pupils are confusing vertices with edges. So there's a little bit of understanding there, but not quite secure yet.
Right, okay. So properties of shape, everybody. Has anybody got great ideas about how they're doing properties of shape? Or indeed, are people seeing, have you covered that already in your classroom and you found actually they're great at it and I can tick that, I can move on? Or are you finding actually, we're having some misconceptions here too? I think there's only one way to go with this, Darryl, and it's got to be chocolate, hasn't it? It's got to be a Toblerone, it's got to be a Terry's chocolate orange. Like, surely, Andy. So we're getting that. This is food. We need food for this.
I think getting like Andy said before, getting the box of shapes out from Key Stage 1, they all have that big, bright, colourful box of shapes. And it'd be quite likely that the children either will have recently done it or about to do it. So if you can coordinate with your Key Stage 1 teachers, get the little ones to come up and teach the year sixes what they've learned. And then it might be that the year sixes actually learn something from them, or that they could kind of teach them back to consolidate that and make it a bit more interactive.
Yeah, well, Carrie, thank you. I would agree. Shape is a big gap for Carrie out there. Lisa, we literally looked at this one today. It's back to those concrete resources. And Natalie as well. We're hugely struggling with shape in my class. We're hoping it would be a quick recap, but we're having to plug a lot of gaps in the learning. Yeah, we hear you. Emma, I found that our cohort has missed huge practical amounts from COVID. This is what we're talking about, Daryl, isn't it? It's super hard to teach this by Zoom or whatever, you know. Yeah, exactly as you just said, Tracy. We're great minds think alike. The ability to visualize the pictures is just so much harder. All right, let's move on to question 2 then, Daryl, because all of this talk of Terry's chocolate orange is making me hungry, and frankly, I had enough of that over Christmas. So I think this next question is going to get a lot of nodding from Year 6 teachers too.
Yeah, this one again, it surprised me with just how many pupils are struggling with this. It is a year 4 objective, but it's this simple fraction decimal equivalence. So secure understanding of those equivalences comes into play in many different areas throughout the curriculum. So it's important to get these reviewed and really secure and embedded as soon as you can. As you can see there, the top wrong answer, a large number of pupils are answering 3.4. So they've had a go at it, but it does kind of indicate to us that they're not sure that 3/4 is even less than 1. And that in itself can indicate there are many more problems still to come once you get into the other fractions domains.
Oh, Sophie, this is a problem, isn't it? You'll have to explain it to me. Why are we seeing gaps in subject areas precisely where we don't want them for the SATs exam? Why is this? What's going on?
It's just, I think, particularly with fractions, it's such a huge content domain, and if the basics aren't there, I mean, it's odd, isn't it, that to a child that 3/4, 3 and 4 is 0.75. Those digits aren't even in 3/4. So if it clearly shows they have no understanding really of what that fraction is. So I feel like, I know I've been guilty of this. You kind of jump onto the year 5 stuff. And actually, I probably need to even start from the beginning of year 3 things, just to get the foundational knowledge of fractions, because there's no point trying to move on to the rest before even doing that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have to say there are some things that just don't go in just as easily. And I remember doing this with time and finding really struggling to learn time because in as they were just describing, you know, quarter past is 15 and 1 is 5. And I was just like, I just can't get it. So maybe it's just one of those tricky areas. Help us out here, Daryl. You've taught this enough. Fractions, fractions, fractions. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah, it's just going to be seeing fractions in as many different ways as possible, really, is key. And also keep it as practical as possible, even with those time restrictions in year 6. I know a few people on the chat there are saying that pupils are really struggling for any aspect of the curriculum that's required practical apparatus, huge gaps there. And it has been a bit of a rush to kind of catch up this cohort as well. Things like folded strips of card with the fractions marked on one side and then the equivalent decimal number line on the other side is a good way to embed some of those as well. Games like loop cards and equivalent FDP bingo, that they were always engaging. And, you know, if you just got 5 minutes for a quick game of bingo, you know, it helps break up the day a little bit and it helps them become really secure. Frame models as well can be really useful to explore exactly what a fraction is and what a fraction isn't. So especially if you find out that a lot of your class are also putting 3.4 in for that question, just really exploring what a fraction is, what it means again, and going right back to that beginning.
Andy, you were saying that your kids, they still love a counting stick.
Oh, most certainly. I think, you know, counting stick is not just for Key Stage 1, you know, still all the way up in year 6. It's such an important resource. You can use it, you know, fractions, decimals, get 2 of them, compare, obviously for, you know, for multiplication, tables, you know, varied facts, etc. So useful. And an added extra, you know, as Daryl was saying there, the Cuisinart rods as well. You know, the children love using them and to compare fractions, they're really, really useful because of the colouring system that they use. But yes, a big advocate of counting stick, and also develop
counting sticks
oracy as well. So who wouldn't want to develop oracy?
Perfect. Sophie, any ideas for fractions from your part of the world?
Yeah, I guess, but something like this for a recall, like I used to do this for times tables, but for something like this it could work as well, is assigning each children a sticker if they're happy to wear it throughout the day, with recall of fraction and decimal or percentage equivalents. So you give a child 3/4, you give another child a 1/5 or a 1/2, and let all the staff know in the school that anytime they walk past the child, you want them to question them on what's the decimal equivalent of that. So that child
love that.
calling it all day, hearing their friends do it, and then you could always swap the stickers around the following day.
Yeah, I absolutely love that idea. Wonderful. Thank you very much, team. Because what I'm getting here is there is absolutely no shame whatsoever in getting out the shapes, getting out the colour pens, getting out the stickers, just because they're year 6 and they're a little bit older and maybe they're acting like they're too cool for school, but actually they still love this stuff and it's still really impactful. So if we have any Key Stage 1 teachers who happen to be with us today, watch out, because I think year 6 are going to be coming in and rifling through your cupboards there for all your goodies. Thank you so much for everyone who is putting ideas as well into the chat. I can see them going through bar charts with Tracy. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, that rounds up all of our insights from autumn term. Hopefully, like some of the people there, you're finding this reassuring. You're actually seeing that you're probably not too far away from what everybody else is experiencing out there. And if you're struggling with it, hopefully you've taken away a couple of things that have been useful for you too. And of course, we've been looking at the really big picture here. How are most of the children getting on? But that's not your cohort specifically. Like I said, if you want to find out where your class is, you can use the SAT Springboard diagnostics for free till the end of February. If you're really, really quick, you do need to get your meetings with us really fast by the 19th, by the end of this week. You can book your meeting for next week or the week after. Obviously, the sooner you book your meeting, the sooner we can get you started on your trial and the longer you'll have it for. But I would say get that meeting booked in the next couple of days because we are filling up really fast with trial places. And we really look after every school on the trial. So there's only so many we can look after. The first 3 diagnostics are going to be free in each area. So you'll be able to see instantly how your class is getting on. So for those of you that do want to see a demo of that, let's get into that now. And then what we'll do is we'll do a quick Q&A before everyone has home time. Does that sound good to everybody? Andy and Sophie, you've been using the SAT Springboard in your schools. Would you recommend? I mean, should people just stick around and have a quick look at this for 10 minutes for what it's worth?
Yeah, if I could have made it myself, I would have done it. It's everything I wanted in sort of a platform for SAT. So yeah, absolutely.
Yes, most certainly. The children really enjoy doing it, finding where the misconceptions are. The teachers, saves them a lot of work. Our support staff love it because they know that interventions are really targeted. And actually our parents love it because the homework is really consistent and clear. And they can usually learn with their child as well. So it's been a win-win.
Well, I think if you get a thumbs up from parents, that is definitely helpful, isn't it, to year 6 teachers? And Sophie, I love that. It's everything I could have wanted. I feel like it's a song. All right, then let's get into it. Kate, would you mind showing everybody the SAT Springboard?
I'm not going to be doing it with a song, Heather, I'm afraid.
Oh, I think we discussed this, Kate, and a song was necessary. All
It's
right,
really
go
not
on then.
happening. Sorry.
Do the
Okay.
interpretive dance again.
Not today, not today. Okay, everybody. So the SAT Springboard. The process will work like this. You'll begin by running a 20-question diagnostic question set. We've got 12 of them for maths and we've got 12 for GPS. The platform will then analyse the data for you and it'll make suggestions of question sets for you to use. It'll make up to 3 suggestions for your whole class to revisit and up to 3 individual suggestions for each pupil based on how they've done. You can review them, you can add more if you like, you can approve the ones that you'd like to address, and you might address them through your whole class revisits, through group revisits, or through some independent targeted practice. Once those gaps have been addressed, you can run Diagnostic 2 with a fresh set of questions and recommendations. So the topic content domains are in the same proportions to the SATS papers across all 12 of the GPS diagnostics, but the year group objectives are more heavily weighted to earlier in the curriculum for the first few diagnostics, so you can use them earlier in year 6, and then the year 6 content is gradually introduced through the course of the 12 diagnostics. By GPS Springboard 9, the year group weightings are also the same, in the same proportion to the SATS papers. For maths, the design of both GPS and maths diagnostics are based on Sophie's analysis of the SATS papers, and so the maths topics are weighted in the similar proportion to the SATS papers too. And as you can see from these graphs here, the year group content domains here at the bottom left and the bottom right, more year 6 content is gradually introduced through the course of the 12 diagnostics. And by Maths Springboard 10, those year group weightings are also now in a similar proportion to the SATs papers. So we can have a little look at the Springboard on the platform now. When you log in, you'll already have the basis of your Springboard scheme set up for you. It'll contain the 12 diagnostics for maths and GPS, and some other useful year 6 content at the end. You can use that whenever you feel is appropriate. But the idea is that you build your own bespoke revision scheme based on your class's exact needs. So once your pupils have gained a little bit of familiarity with the basics of the platform, you'll want to run diagnostic now. So here's a little preview of what the pupils see. If they get a question correct first time, the bar goes green. And if they get a wrong answer, the bar at the top will turn red, and they'll get some very specific feedback based on their answer. So they can self-correct it immediately, and then the bar will turn orange. So as pupils work through those questions, the teacher sees a screen like this one. If you've got one handy, Daryl, thank you. The teacher will see in real time exactly how the class are doing, and so you can intervene immediately when required. You can pause the session whenever you like. You can pull up the question that's causing problems. You can model some strategies, and you can even send that back to pupils for a quick learning check. You probably wouldn't want to do this with a diagnostic, but it is a really powerful in the lesson for maintaining focus and keeping your class moving forwards together. If we can now have a look, Daryl, at what happens after the diagnostic, we've got our unique analyse and suggestions feature. So once you've run the diagnostic, as well as that live gap analysis, you've had the platform analyses the data for you, and it'll make suggestions of question sets which will help fill the gaps that your class have, as well as individual gaps that your pupils have. So you can see here it's analysed the data. It's identified 3 areas for class improvement. So we've got practicing subtracting mentally. Thank you for making that big enough for me to read. Adding numbers mentally, and multiplying divide numbers. So there's suggested sets there. There's also related sets you can have a look through to see if you'd like any of those. It's recommended one of our full mastery sets here, which I can quickly talk you through. Full mastery sets will begin with pictorial support or scaffolding in level 1. And then when pupils have answered enough questions on level 1, they'll progress to level 2, which is our fluency level, where they'll answer questions that meet the main objectives independently. In maths, you've got some simple one-step problems towards the end of level 2. And then they'll move to level 3, which is reasoning. Level 4 is problem solving. Every mastery set contains 5 quality reasoning questions to promote deep thought and expose those misconceptions, and also 5 problem solving questions, and these will make even your fastest workers slow down and really think deeply. In English mastery sets, pupils progress to application levels and deeper engagement with the objective in those levels. So you can have a browse through the questions themselves, and you can choose now whether to set a reminder or to add it to your revision scheme to come back to at a later date. And you can add more if you like. Once you've dealt with your class gaps, sorry, Daryl. You can click on the individual suggestions tab. Now we can see which gaps have been identified for our individual pupils. So we can see here at the top that James needs to work through those 3 things. But if we scroll down, can we have a look at Isabella, please, Daryl? Isabella has done really, really well on that diagnostic. So she's been set some extension activities to deepen her understanding there and really challenge her. You can review and set these question sets for pupils to complete independently, whether that's some point during the week or even for homework. When you're happy with all those, there's a convenient set all button. If you're happy, the platform's made good suggestions for your pupils. So that's it. You've done one diagnostic question set, you've got your first lot of skills gaps identified, and then with just a few more clicks, you've planned appropriate class revisits, you've assigned individual work to address those gaps, and you've not needed to do any laborious marking or question level analysis at all.
Hooray, hooray, every crowd goes wild. Andy, this is a bit of a game changer, doesn't it? Like, I don't know how a human being could have actually done this. Set, 2 or 3 individualized tasks for every single pupil pertaining to their specific gaps.
Yeah, and it's literally, like you said, a click of a button, select, set all selected. You can also change them around if you want. If you don't want to set 3 for all the children, you can untick them. And like you showed there, if someone got them all right, even sets extensions. So yeah, it's most certainly a game changer. We use it, for our homework, but also for our interventions and then for our morning maths. So we can easily get that data. We do maths 1 week, GPS another week, because there's 12 of them. So there's enough weeks all the way up to SATs week. And it's working an absolute treat.
You can actually do it as well. I've seen a couple of people in the chat. You can actually do it in segments. So if you've only got so many devices or so many kids at that point, you can still run a diagnostic with some of them and then do it with the rest of them later, can't you?
Yeah, it works on I think, the LBQ team will be able to tell us, but there's a percentage needed to be completed, so long as the majority of your class have completed it, it will give you the data and all the analysis that's being shown on screen now.
Yeah, and talking about analysis, Sophie, have you found anything that's just surprising that you've kind of gone, oh my gosh, I would not have known that?
Yeah, just like random little content domains from earlier year groups, which I may have picked up on intuitively in time, but actually having the, explicitly in front of you, this is a year 3 objective question set. I think I'll give that before I introduce the topic because it's a good little, assessment before I teach it. And then all these like random little gaps that I would never, or it would have taken me to ages to pick up on. And actually I can then just address through LBQ anyway. So it finds the problem and solves it. So it's just both.
That's fantastic. I love it when teachers are surprised. So that's LBQ, just a massive amount of learning that you can do there in like 20 minutes. So, really fantastic. Definitely a resource you want to get your hands on. To school, I'm just putting up a slide now to show the impact. These are not unusual stories that we're hearing back here. I mean, Andy Dodd is one of our originals, aren't you, Andy, at Macefield? And you saw that impact years ago. But this is what we're starting to see now with the SAT Springboard. I mean, people doing it for 4, 5, 6 weeks at the most and seeing kind of 20, 30% increase on their ARE, because you're teaching what you need to teach, who you need to teach it to, when you need to teach it as well. And, what do the kids think of it, Sophie and Andy?
Yeah, they love it, particularly kids that struggle to get things down on paper. I had one child who I was totally unaware of his ability in maths because he really struggled to get pen to paper and form numbers and keep things in boxes. And then when I put him on LBQ, I just suddenly saw how amazing he was. So it really opened my eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, and for independence and motivation of the pupils as well, our pupils really enjoy that part of it, that each springboard they want to do a little bit better. So we kind of set them little targets for that, which helps. And they know that they're doing this not just for a bit of a test that's going to be marked and maybe never looked at again. They know that instantly it's setting them extra work, whether that's tomorrow morning's morning work or the rest of the week's morning work for the whole class, whether that's an intervention with a TA in school, or whether that's homework individualized for them.
Yeah.
Purposeful.
Brilliant. All right, everybody. So what you need to do, if you want to use this to the end of February, book in with a meeting with us. I do appreciate it, and so will the people who meet you. And they're really lovely. They're just us lot with another brew in cold, wintry Lancashire, and they'd like to meet you. And so just book our meeting. It takes 15 minutes, 20 minutes, because they also can allocate extra licenses to other teachers throughout the school. There's other products that we've got that will work really well in year 3 and 4 and 5. And we can turn them all on all at the same time, so you can use SATs as well as seeing the benefit through the rest of the school. You don't need loads of tech, because as long as you have access to the tech at least kind of once a week, you can run that diagnostic, can't you, Sophie? And you can then choose how you're going to teach the rest of the week, or you can set things to be done independently, either at home, on any internet connected device. I'm talking about a mobile phone, I'm talking about a gaming console. So as long as you can do that diagnostic, that's going to give you so much information as a teacher of knowing exactly where your kids are and what they need. And then you can do the next thing until the next week, and then run the next diagnostic and so on. So yeah, jump on it. Like I said, end of the week, please do get your meetings. Do not be disappointed. We had 600 schools last January. It's looking exactly the same this January. And that is why we cannot accept loads and loads of schools past that point. All right, enough about all the LBQ stuff. Daryl's just going to put up a slide up there so you can just get it, certain in your brain what's going on. Anybody got, Paul, you've been working on the chat with everybody and getting you've been seeing all the top tips and the questions. Is there a key theme, key questions, anything that we should put to the panel?
There are a few questions. Johnny, I think, well, this is more of a statement, really, just says, feeling very reassured right now. Thank you very much. So I just thought I'd pass that one on to all the panel.
Oh, well done, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Jenny asks, are the mark schemes still very strict with the size of the apostrophe and its position in words?
I can answer that one only because I saw someone's reply, who is a SATs marker apparently, that said, as long as it's clear, as long as their intention is clear, it's fine. But if it's ambiguous, they'll mark it wrong.
There you go.
Okay,
so
great.
Clarity.
Toby asks a question here. Toby asks, I find that the children in my class really struggle to answer RPS questions, especially when it comes to fractions. How might you suggest we improve this?
That's one for Daryl there.
I don't know if it only appeared to Toby, maybe, because I just replied to him, but I've replied to a couple of them.
What was your top tip then, Sophie, in case somebody's missed it?
I said, have you tried do word problems but hide the numbers? Because then if they see the numbers, they just guess the operation and race to get the answer. But if you focus on the method you actually need to do, then you can put the numbers, but really, really basic numbers in, and then you can swap them out for the real numbers in the question. So just removing the numerical information from it.
Andy, you were nodding then. Is that
I did see Sophie's response, so that's why I saw it.
Daryl, anything to add on that? I think everybody was like, yeah, fractions, it's going to be an issue.
Yeah, sorry, I was just lost in catching note of the chat there. So, yeah, nothing more to add from me on that one. I think it's about reasoning problem solving. Is that the question?
It was about RPS on the fractions. I can't find the question now. I have to go back.
Yeah,
Paul, have you got the
I find that
again?
I find that children in my class really struggle to answer RPS questions, especially when it comes to fractions. How might you suggest we improve this?
Yeah, it's for fundamental knowledge, as we went into. If you're on LBQ, we have every single fractions objective has 5 quality reasoning questions, 5 quality problem solving questions, where if they do get it wrong, it will step them through the processes as well.
So brilliant, good few examples there, good ideas, hopefully, and it sounds like you got that covered in the chat as well. So thanks for picking that up. Multitasking as per. Anything else, Paul?
Catherine says, it's not a question, it's more of a tip, really, I think. Catherine says she's done answer-free papers where the children annotate a SATs paper and highlight bits of the question, discuss how to answer the questions and talk in pairs or as a class. They don't need to know the answer, but more how to work it out.
Andy, I like that one. What do you think about that?
Yeah, answer three questions work really well, because actually it's about their understanding, especially with something like problem solving. It's not about the answer like it is with maths in general. It's about your mathematical understanding of, for instance, which operation to select, which multi-step you need to take first. So yeah, they're a really good strategy, and I saw that one on the chat as well, and would totally agree.
When I've been in your classrooms as well, Andy, there's a lot of kind of peer-to-peer learning going on, and I've heard you say, that's one way. Can anyone think of an even better way, a more efficient way of doing that, and getting
Yeah.
some nice class discussion going?
Yeah, I think that's so important, especially for our year six pupils to develop that independence. But actually, efficiency in maths is a really important strand, of the mastery approach to make sure that children are being, efficient with the maths to make it quicker, but also more accurate, as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. Thanks. All right, Paul, have we got anything else? Oh, Kate's jumping in. Kate, have you got a question? I hope it's on English, because I know someone really good on English.
I think I saw a question from Kathy about, is there a springboard for reading too? There isn't currently a springboard for reading, but there are a lot of reading resources for you on the platform, and there are 9 SATs reading test practice papers on there with original text on there, so they can practice those skills.
Sorry, I did promise that my dog would turn up at one point, and he has turned up now and wants to steal the show. Sophie, I saw you were answering some questions about reading. It's tricky at this stage, isn't it? I mean, what can we do to support our children when it comes to the reading now?
It is really hard because I almost feel like, they've had 6 years at primary school, and with reading, it's not like new content you can teach them. It's a skill that they've had, a lot of teaching in already. So, I mean, test technique is a horrible one, but, important to pick up some of the marks, even just, if it's a box question, a tick box question, just tick a box, even if you don't know. But working on their fluency, and just doing as much reading exposure to different texts as possible. Looking at the Greek and Latin root words is, again, really good for when they come across a word that they don't know, to kind of help them maybe work it out if there's any prefixes or root words in there that they can recognize. And then just short burst comprehension. I think I said to someone in the chat, I like the LBQ short reads for that.
We've got
lots of
if you get on the SAT Springboard trial as well, it's not just about the diagnostics. There is all the content domains. There's question sets for every single content domain, going all the way back to key stage, all the way back through the key stage. And there's also over 140 short reads and text. You want to do retrieval practice, you're going to find a really perfect little story on there. We also have some text, some famous text. You've got the first chapter of, the boy from the back of the class and so on. So you'll definitely find some really great reading material, as well as the larger library. So you're not thinking, oh my gosh, where am I going to go and find that year 3 content domain stuff that I really, really need? And I'm going to go onto Twinkle, or I'm going to go into TES through the middle of the night, and I'm going to come up with some stuff. Those days are over. You'll just be able to type in what you need, and it's just there, isn't it, Andy? There's something for everyone.
Yeah, most certainly. There's so much content on there now, but it's really easy to find it through the search or through year group filter as well, and it aligns to a lot of the schemes, such as White Rose Maths, for instance. Even shows you week by week for every year group from year 2 even now. Kate will know that our year 2 teacher's very passionate about trying all of her new resources.
Yeah, they test things out for me beautifully.
She does love it. So even they're really well versed on it now at Masefield.
Yeah, definitely. It's if you want to see it used par excellence, I think it's at Masefield is the place to see it, because it's just ingrained
always
into
more than
everything.
welcome, doors
Oh, there you
open.
go, everybody. It's just an
Always
open
welcome.
invitation. Head up to Bolton. If you can stand the snow, come up to Masefield Primary School and see how it's going. All right, so any more insights questions, Paul, specifically, as opposed to LBQ questions?
Well, no, there's just been people, lots on the chat about how people are struggling with the old plural possessive apostrophes. So you're not on your own there.
Yeah, I think there were some really lovely ideas in the plural possessive apostrophes. Even just saying it is a challenge, frankly, that we put in there. If we think of any more, we will definitely share them with everybody who signed up. But yeah, I mean, hopefully, pop it in the chat. If you found today reassuring, if you thought, I think I'm so alone, my kids are struggling with these things, but actually now you go, actually, this is where everybody is, and I don't feel so alone anymore, and my kids are where most of the kids are, then please do put that in the chat. It'd be good to know, because as we move through spring too as well, we might do this again, as we get around that other side of that February half term, and just do this again, see how the kids have progressed, see where the gaps are there, see where the strengths are as well, and we'll get everybody together and we'll do something like this again if you like it. All right, I don't think there's anything more from the Q&A. If I've missed you, I'm really, really sorry. Do drop us an email at info@lbq.org and promise you that we will get back to you. I want to thank my panel so much, especially on a snowy day when we could be anywhere and a dog could come in and an Amazon delivery driver and we just don't know what might happen next, but you've all been absolutely fantastic as usual. We will be sending everybody a copy of the recording. So anyone who's watching this as a recording, obviously these dates may have passed. So you must get in touch and we'll just have a demo with you and we'll show it to you. So you can certainly see it. We can have a chat to you about your school and how LBQ can help your school. But hopefully the insights are really helpful too. All right, thank you so much as well to everybody who came on. A really, stickers for everybody who put stuff in the chat as well for taking part. That's character. We absolutely love it. Thank you so much for doing that. To all my team at LBQ as well, much love to you. And to Andy and Sophie in particular for bringing the expertise. What would we do without you? You're absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody. Be really, really careful driving home if you're still in school and you don't. Get your snow boots on and take care. And I hope that we'll see you all soon. Get your meetings booked. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Goodbye.